Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to the 200th episode of Cinematic Reviews. This, of course, is the show about all things movies and TV, and I am your host, Chris, for the 200th time. I got a super awesome episode planned for you today. I'll be giving my review of James Gunn's Superman, along with some Superman rankings, and we'll go over some news bits and a reaction from Netflix as well. At the top of the episode, a couple of reminders. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the cinematic reviews. You can also listen to the audio versions on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can also follow the show on Facebook, Instagram, and X. It helps out the show a lot, and I appreciate everyone that's been here for the first 200 episodes of the show. You guys are awesome, and I love getting feedback from all of you on how to improve the show. The show has gone through many different iterations over the 200 episodes, and now we're finally on YouTube so that you can see me as well as hear me. Before, it was just strictly an audio podcast, but this year in 2025, I made it my goal and my mission to make this also a video podcast. So you can check that out, like I said, every week at youtube.com/the cinematic reviews. To kick off the show, let's head over to news and reactions. Couple of Superman related news. Superman has earned $22.5 million on its first day, which would have been Thursday, July 10th. It is predicted to get up to 140 million, I think, for the entire weekend, possibly 200 million, depending on how all the ticket sales go through between Thursday and Sunday. I was able to see it on the first showing in my hometown. So I was very excited to be able to see that so I can get this review out as quick as possible. This is probably the quickest review that I have done in a long, long time on the show. So I'm really excited to give you my really fresh takes on James Gunn's Superman. We've also been told by David Cornsweet, the next actor to play Superman, he is actually contracted for a sequel, which, no surprise, I'm sure James Gunn has multiple sequels lined up as far as Superman goes. This is the first chapter in his new DC universe that he has created. Peacemaker's coming up. Wonder Woman, I'm sure, is coming. Batman, The Flash, those will eventually be coming as well. But this is the first chapter in that new universe, similar to what Zack Snyder did in his universe many years ago. He started off with a Superman movie, so it was kind of deja vu once again for DC fans. But we are expected to see a Superman 2 starring David Cornsweet once again, which is really awesome. And then as far as reactions, I do have one reaction for you today. This is from Netflix. So if you have Netflix, go ahead and check this out. And that is Quarterback Season 2. This is the third season now of the popular NFL documentary series. We've recently had Quarterback Season 1, which centered around Vikings quarterback at the time, Kirk Cousins, Atlanta Falcons quarterback at the time, Marcus Mariota, and then the current quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. Then we went on to have receiver, centering around Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings, George Kittle, and Deebo Samuel Sr. From the San Francisco 49ers, and then Amon-Ra St. Brown of the Detroit Lions, those seasons are really awesome. I really recommend those if you're a NFL fan. And then now this season 2 of quarterback, we have Kirk Cousins returning, but this time as a player of the Atlanta Falcons. We also get Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions, and then Joe Burrow from the Cincinnati Bengals, who is my favorite quarterback currently right now. So I was very excited to watch that. I really like this season. This might have been my favorite season so far of this little mini NFL docu-series that Netflix has been putting on. Joe Burrow was great to get to dive into what he deals with on the field and off the field, as well as Jared Goff, who I wasn't really too familiar with before this, but now we get to see his personal life and all the struggles that he has dealt with on the field and off the field as well. And then we get to catch up with Kirk Cousins, who is now a Atlanta Falcon, which is very interesting to see where his mindset and kind of where he's at in his NFL career. So definitely check out Quarterback Season 2. It's worth the watch, especially if you're a fan of the NFL. Peyton Manning, who has executive produced the show, does a really good job. He actually narrates that beginning part of the show to kind of set the tone of the season, which is really cool. I'm looking forward to more seasons like this. I hope they do maybe a running back season or tight end season, and I'm sure they'll do another wide receiver season as well. So really excited about this NFL take on Netflix with these documentaries. It's really, really well done. Love the players that they chose to come on here. I kind of wish they would have had somebody other than Kirk Cousins, since we just recently saw him in season 1. But he is a pretty good friend of Netflix and Peyton Manning, so I'm sure they wanted to catch up with him after everything that he went through during season 1 of Quarterback. So check out Quarterback seasons 1 and 2, as well as Receiver season 1 on Netflix today. That's all the news and reactions I have for you today. Let's head over to our featured film of the day, Superman.
Krypto. Home. Take me home.
Superman.
James Gunn's Superman catches us up with the very popular hero of Metropolis. He has been Superman for 3 years, which is a very interesting place to start. Very similar to what we were introduced when Christopher Reeve came on screen as Superman. He had been Superman for many years versus Henry Cavill's, Zack Snyder's take, where we go way back and get the origin stories of Kal-El / Clark Kent. But this time, James Gunn made the decision to throw us right into Superman currently protecting the world. I thought that was a really interesting choice, and I really like it. Very similar to the Batman movies. We've seen Batman's parents get shot numerous times in that dark alleyway of Gotham City. I think it was a good choice to just kind of drop us in the middle of Superman doing his thing instead of going through the entire origin stories again. We all know the origins of Superman. He was sent to Earth by his parents from the planet Krypton, which blew up uh, due to an unstable environment. And he was sent to Earth to not only just kind of live out his life, but to improve the lives of Earth. Whereas this take in the Superman lore was a pretty interesting take on James Gunn's part. At the beginning of the movie, we are shown this message from Jor-El and Laura, where basically they explain to Clark that, hey, we sent you here to Earth to be protected from our destructive ways on Krypton, as well as becoming a hero to the people of Earth. Where then that's where Lex comes in and kind of distorts that message and reveals that he was sent to actually rule the world and conquer Earth and have all the Earth people his slaves, which is not who Clark Kent is. He is a protector, savior-like figure to the people of Metropolis. So I thought that was a really cool plot point to introduce to a Superman movie, where they kind of Lex Luthor turns the entire world against Superman, and he has to prove his innocence and prove to the world that he is the symbol of hope, that he is the savior that they all been wanting. Um, David Corenswet is now the current Superman actor. I think he did a really good job. I'll talk about him a little bit more when we go through the cast. But I think he did a really, really good job. I like his take on the very beloved character. I wasn't a biggest fan of his costume when the trailers came out, but after seeing the movie in its entirety, it's starting to grow on me. I like the design of it. I like the bright colors. It's very different than what Zack Snyder gave us. If you remember Man of Steel, the big criticism behind that one was the very dark tones in the costume. Now James Gunn has gone the complete 180 of that and made it very, very bright. There are some scenes where he's even brighter than Green Lantern, which was a big surprise to me because, with the green, you would think Green Lantern would stand out. But there's moments in the movie where he's with Green Lantern and he really pops out on the screen, really emphasizing that he is the center character of this movie and that is his movie. So I thought that was a really cool decision on James Gunn's part as well. Like I said, this picks up 3 years into his Superman career. That beginning little snippet at the beginning of the movie, I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I get the humor behind it, where it says like, metahumans have been around for 300 years. It's been 3 years since Superman revealed himself. It's been like 3 minutes, 3 seconds until Superman first lost his fight and he is broken. So I mean, I get the humor behind that James Gunn was trying to do. It's just I think it went on a little bit too long. But I get it's kind of setting up like, hey, this movie is going to be really funny. There's going to be a lot of humor in there. It's going to be really lighthearted. It's not going to be as serious as Zack Snyder's take, which was a really big another criticism that was for Zack Snyder's universe. It was too dark, too meek and melancholy, very violent, which there is some violence in here. But James Gunn kind of was strategic a little bit on how much dark, violent acts happen in here. Most of those happen at the hands of Lex Luthor, which makes sense because he is the villain of the story. And Nicholas Hoult plays a really psychotic and angry Lex Luthor, which I thought was a really cool take on the character. We've seen little bits of that, like from Jesse Eisenberg and Gene Hackman a little bit. Kevin Spacey was kind of, wacky in Superman Returns. But what Nicholas Hoult does in here, it's really almost Joker-esque in a way, I guess would be a really good comp to him. You could tell he's really mentally unstable, really jealous of Superman, has a lot of anger towards him. And Nicholas Hoult does a really good job at bringing that out, giving his own version of what he thinks Lex Luthor would be in this situation. So I kind of actually was into his version of Lex, which has seen a lot of different iterations throughout the years. Different actors have done different takes. A lot of them I didn't really care for. And we'll talk about the Lex Luthor specifically in the ranking segment today. But I think Nicholas Hoult did a really good job. Uh, Looking at more of the cast, we have Rachel Brosnahan, who plays Lois Lane. I'm not too familiar with her. When they announced her as Lois Lane, I was kind of like, who the heck is she? I can't recall a single project that I've seen her in, but I think she did a good job as Lois Lane. It's tough to go up against, like Amy Adams, who played Lois in the Snyder universe. Then we have Margaret Kidder, who played her in the Reeves Superman universe, who I really like. I think Margaret, and Kidder and Amy Adams were fantastic in Lois Lane. Rachel, of course, brought in her version of Lois Lane, and I thought it fit well with the universe that James Gunn was trying to build. She had really good chemistry with David Corenswet in the movie as well. And you could tell that they have really good chemistry off screen, which helps a lot. If you've seen any of the press tours or the interviews that they've done together, so they did. I think getting Clark Kent and Lois Lane to have that good chemistry is a huge part in making a Superman film, and I think James Gunn did a good job at picking out the cast and writing a script that really brought out that good chemistry between the two actors. We get Jimmy Olsen, who's played by Skylar Gisondo, I think is how you say it. He is one that I'm pretty familiar with. He is a kid actor that was in quite a bit of stuff when I was growing up. Let's see if I can find him. I hate how IMDb has this cast. They're just kind of all over the place. I might just have to search his name here. Skylar. I'm trying to remember a project that I've seen him in. Vacation. Yep, he played in Vacation with Ed Helms. He was in Night at the Museum. I believe he was Ben Stiller's kid or something like that. Licorice Pizza. That's probably the one I remember most. Spider-Man 2, he played in Once Upon a Time. So he's been in a bunch of stuff. Recently, it would be Licorice Pizza that I've seen him in. He was really good in there. He's really good as Jimmy Olsen. He's kind of a how do I word this right? He's a bit of a ladies' man, I guess you could say. The running joke in this movie is that he gets all these beautiful women to basically fall over heels for him, and he just has no interest in any of them. He is actually in kind of a weird, unique relationship with Lex Luthor's girlfriend, because I guess him and her are kind of like secretly dating for him to extract information about Lex Luthor from her. So that was kind of a funny subplot within the movie, was their kind of little secret romance that you could tell that he wasn't really into, but she was really into him. And you have Lois Lane just in the background every so often, just like, what is your secret, Jimmy? Like, how do you get all these beautiful women to fall for you? So, I mean, that was kind of a funny subplot on James Gunn's part there. Then we're introduced to the Justice Gang, as Nathan Fillion calls it, which will eventually become the Justice League, I'm sure, in future films. But we have Guy Gardner, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl as kind of the beginning members of the Justice Gang. Or Justice Gang. Of course, Superman comes in there, and eventually I'm sure he'll become one of the main members of the Justice League, along with the Flash, Wonder Woman, Batman, Martian Manhunter, I'm sure. So they'll eventually join this group. But I think having these three characters was a really cool take. We don't really get to see, Hawkgirl at all. We've seen Hawkeye in like Smallville and some other Superman shows. Mr. Terrific was in the Arrowverse, if you've ever watched that. So James Gunn really likes to work with characters that you aren't too in the spotlight in comics. Take his Suicide Squad movie for example. You have King Shark, who hasn't really been in a whole lot of stuff. Rat Catcher, I've never heard of that character until that movie came out. Polka Dot Man, same thing. Never heard of that character until that movie came out. Um, so James Gunn really likes to get into the weird stuff in DC. Same thing with Marvel. He did that with the Guardians of the Galaxy, where before the Guardians of the Galaxy's movies, I had no idea that was a group within the Marvel universe. They're kind of weird, thrown away characters in the comic books. So he really thrives on the weird and kind of out there like characters. So picking these three as the starters of the Justice League doesn't surprise me. Guy Gardner, played by Nathan Fillion, who is a really good friend of James Gunn. You've probably seen him in other James Gunn films like Guardians of the Galaxy. He was in all three of those. He's been in. Uh, he does the show The Rookie. If you've seen that, which is a really good show. I highly recommend that one. It's a really good cop show. And he's been in a bunch of other stuff throughout his career. But he's been pretty attached to James Gunn, which I'm totally fine with. Christopher Nolan has his actors he loves working with. Martin Scorsese has his actors that he loves to work with. James Gunn is no exception to that rule. Michael Rosenbaum, who you probably remember from Smallville, he played Lex Luthor in that show. He's another actor that's been attached to James Gunn because they're really good friends. He's actually in this movie as one of Lex Luthor's I think Raptor Squad, I think is, if I remember right, that's what they're called. He's one of the guards in there. Um, so, but Nathan Fillion was really good. I mean, the haircut's kind of weird, but that's Guy Gardner for you. Guy Gardner is a Green Lantern that I'm not really too familiar with. Hal Jordan, John Stewart, like those two are the ones I'm more familiar with. I've heard of Guy Gardner. I just never really read any comic books with him in. I've seen a few of the Justice League cartoons with him in there. So before this movie came out, I was kind of familiar with the character. But it was really cool to get a little bit more from that. And Nathan Fillion did a fantastic job. He's always great in what he does. And I think he really brings out the Guy Gardner character really well. He's kind of a hard ass in some scenes, but he also is cracking jokes because it is a James Gunn movie at the end of the day. So I think he was awesome. Mr. Terrific was played by Eddie Gallagher. The only thing I remember him being in was X-Men First Class. If you remember, he was like the Element guy. Now he's switching over to the DC universe as Mr. Terrific, who's the super genius who uses the tech, the T-balls or whatever he calls them, the T-spheres. But he was really great. He's doesn't care about people a whole lot, but he does, doing the right thing, saving the world, making sure technology doesn't get into the wrong hands. But he was really good. I really enjoyed him. He's got kind of a weird costume, but it was very comic booky. He's got the big black the T on his face. He's got the outfit. So, I mean, the mask is kind of weird and ridiculous, but that's how the character looks in the comics. Same thing with Guy Gardner with the haircut. That's how his hair looks like in the comics. So I respect James Gunn even though it's ridiculous, he did stay true to the comic book look, which was really good to see in a comic book movie. I love it when the directors do that. And then Hawkgirl is played by Isabel Merced, who I absolutely love. She's actually in my top 10 for favorite actresses of all time. She has been in a bunch of things over the years. I love her in Instant Family with Wahlberg. But now she's joined the DC universe as Hawkgirl, who she's really good. She's got the loud siren that she does every now and then. She's got the giant hammer. She's got the wings and the mask. Very comic booky the way she looks, but I really liked her. She was awesome, cracking jokes. Still playing kind of like a teenager a little bit. I think she would be in her early 20s. I think the actress Isabella herself, she's 24. So I got to imagine Hawkgirl is probably in that, early 20 range. So she's still a kid, but she's kind of an adult at the same time. So she played it very, very well, and I'm super excited to see more of her. She is planned to be in Peacekeeper along with John Cena, so very exciting. Some of the other cast members that kind of show up throughout the movie, we have Perry White, of course, who is the chief editor of the Daily Planet. He's played by Wendell Pierce, who you probably recognize from the Jack Ryan series on Amazon. I thought he was great. Doesn't get a whole lot of screen time, but he was a pretty awesome sight to see in here. You can't have Daily Planet without Perry White, so I think Wendell Pierce played it very well. Then we have Rick Flag Sr., or General Flag if you want to call him that. But he was played by Frank Grillo, who I absolutely love. I'm very excited to see Grillo play Rick Flag and more. I think he's supposed to be popping up in Peacemaker, but I'm not positive on that. He will be voicing Rick Flag in the Creature Commandos animated movie, I believe, or show. I can't remember if that's a show or not. But he's always great to see. I think he was a perfect casting for Rick Flag, and I'm very excited to see what he does with it. Then we have the engineer, who is kind of Lex Luthor's assassin, bodyguard, second in command, whatever you want to call him. She is played by Maria Gabriela de Ferra. That's a character I've never heard of. I honestly don't know if that's an actual DC character, or if that's one that James Gunn made up. I gotta imagine she's really in the DC lore, so let me look it up here. The engineer in DC Universe. So she's just called the engineer in there, I guess. Comic book with a liquid machinery body that can transform into weapons, which we see a lot of that in the movie. I like the effect that James Gunn designed for her liquid metal powers. So she is first appeared in The Authority, which is another DC project on the schedule for James Gunn's universe. So she is an actual character. That's cool. I've never heard of her before until this, but she was really good. Like I said, she has the liquid machine powers that allows her to basically create any weapon. I really hated her when she threw that goo crap at Krypto and was basically suffocating him. And then we get that scene at the very end of the movie where she's basically waterboarding Superman with her liquid machine parts into his lungs, which was a very gruesome scene. And I can't imagine the pain that he went through to have those machine parts in his lungs. Like, that was freaking crazy when they did that. And then we have Ma Kent and Pa Kent, which I'm just going to say right now, I don't like what they did with the Kents. James Gunn really, how do I say this nicely, really poked fun at the Midwest people. Me kind of living in the Midwest myself, we don't sound like that. And if they do, it's very small percentage of people in the Midwest sound like that. But the accent's one thing. The thing that really kind of bothered me about James Gunn's take on Martha and John Kent, one is the whole ma and pa thing. Like, no, like Superman's not going to call his mom Ma. Even like it's going to be mom. So I don't want to keep comparing this movie to Man of Steel, but Man of Steel did Jonathan Kent and Martha Kent, I think, the best out of all of these live action takes. Movie wise, the ones Smallville, the show, did the best job when it came to the Kents. But if we're gonna stick in the movie realm, which I want to try to do on the show, I'll bring up Smallville and some of the other shows throughout the episode today. But I want to try to keep the focus on the movies because I like to keep the shows and the movies separated. So looking at the scope of the movies themselves, I think Zack Snyder did the best job when it came to Martha and Jonathan Kent. What James Gunn did with them in here was not good in my eyes. Like, I know in the trailer we got a little bit of, he didn't even talk. Like, it was just one scene of Clark hugging his dad out on the porch. That's all we got in the trailers when it came to the Kents, which made me very nervous about James Gunn's take on the Kents. And my fears, unfortunately, were right because I did not like what he did with the Kents at all. I found it very annoying and very kind of disrespectful to the history and the lore that came with Martha and Jonathan. Um, he made them idiots, and I don't like that. They're supposed to be the bedrock of who Clark is, who Superman is, and he just kind of poked fun of them. It made them look ridiculous. Um, I know James Gunn wants to make this, lighthearted and funny, but what he did with the Kents just really bothered me. And it's the one reason why this movie is not the best Superman movie. I'll reveal in the ranking segment which one I think is the best Superman movie ever made. Uh, but screwing up this bad with the Kents really holds this movie back. Um, I really wish he would have. Like, the actors were fine. Like, Neva Howell, and I've seen her before, and she's a good actress. Pruitt Taylor Vince, who plays Jonathan Kent. I've never really seen him before, but I think he was. I'm sure he's a fine actor. It's just what James Gunn gave them to work with was very minuscule and not great. You know what I love about Snyder's Man of Steel was the the conversations that Jonathan had with Clark about, what is he supposed to be, what kind of Superman is he supposed to be. um, and that's a really big part of the Smallville show, is those conversations between Clark and Jonathan about what kind of man do you want to be, what kind of hero do you want to be. You're meant to be something really important and special to the world. And they give Jonathan Kent one line or a couple lines in here where he's like, it's about the actions that define who the man is. I don't have the actual quote in front of me, um, but basically what he says is, a man is defined by what he does, not who he is. Um, and that's really the only really serious and emotional moment between him and Jonathan and Clark. And I was expecting more to come out of a Superman movie, more really big and deep conversations between Clark, what version of Clark, what version of Superman does Jonathan see, and we get that really. And I'll say this, it moved me a little bit when Jonathan was like choking up and he couldn't quite get the words out, and he was trying his best to say that he was proud of his kid for the hero that he has become. And that was really touching. I'll be honest with there. But I just really expected more from Martha and Jonathan. And James Gunn, I feel like, just kind of threw them to the side a little bit, made fun of them. Same thing with Jor-El and Laura. The only time we really get to see his Kryptonian parents are through this message that's distorted and in Kryptonian. Like, there's not even subtitles to it, which I was very surprised. I figured, just make it in English, or if you really want to use Kryptonian, just put subtitles in there. Granted, I'm sure he wanted to give robots, the Superman bots, something to do, so they were translating the message to the audience. And that's kind of how what was it, bot number 22 or whatever, she's kind of the audience in there, where 4 is, who I think was voiced by Alan Tudyk, who is awesome. He's kind of speaking to 22 as if he's speaking to the audience. That's a really big movie trick where we introduce this character who's new to the group, and they're kind of treated as the audience. And so they kind of feed the audience information and catch the audience up through this one character. I mean, Inception is notorious for that. Elliot Page's character in there that's the only job in that movie, is to be the audience in Inception. James Gunn does that trick in here with the Superman bots, where the number 4 is educating the audience watching the movie through, bot number 22, who is newly made. But Same thing there. I wish that we gotten more. Bradley Cooper plays Jarrell, which was kind of hard to tell. He's got the beard on. He's got a different hairstyle. He's in this holographic message that was distorted from the crash from Krypton. I think they wasted Bradley Cooper's time, honestly. I expected a lot more. Again, I don't want to keep comparing it to Snyder's, but we got a lot of Jarrell and a lot of really good scenes with Jarrell, who was played by Russell Crowe in that one. So I just think there's those two specific things, his relationship with Jarrell and his relationship with Jonathan Kent. I think James Gunn really dropped the ball on it. And I hope in a sequel we kind of get something more out of it. We get Clark to actually talk to Jarrell, or we get some actual more deep conversations between Clark and Jonathan. That's just the part that really bothered me the most in this movie. And it's a shame because Jarrell and Jonathan Kent are huge parts of the Superman story and who Clark or Kal-El is as a man and as Superman. So really dropped the ball on that, unfortunately. A couple of notes: the cinematography or the look of the film, I really liked it. I have a note on here actually that says, "Is this the best looking Superman film?" It's up there. There's portions of the Snyder Man of Steel movie that I really love, like him taking flight. I think the flying needs to be touched up a bit. It just looks really weird and awkward the way that they filmed David Cornsweet flying in here. It wasn't as smooth and natural looking as Snyder did with Henry Cavill's Superman. But as far as like the look, the CGI and all that, I think it's really bright colors, really good CGI and effects in this movie. So I mean, I don't think it's the best looking one. I think Man of Steel still looks better, but it's really well done with the camera work, and especially when it comes to the action. The way they filmed the action was really cool. It felt like a Guardians of the Galaxy movie, which Guardians of the Galaxy aesthetically looks really good. I think the Guardians movies are one of the best looking Marvel movies. So James Gunn's Superman is definitely up there for me, but I don't think it's quite the best looking one, but it looks really cool, especially on the biggest screen possible. I'm really glad I got to see it on the Ultra screen with the loudspeakers and the big bright screen. It really makes the movie pop. So it was really good there. Kind of segueing over to the action and fight sequences. I really like the fight choreography in here. I love the way they choreographed it. Superman's moves are really cool in here. You could tell that in 3 years he's really learned how to fight. Whereas in like Man of Steel, that's like his first time being Superman, so he's a little amateurish. But you can really tell that Superman in this movie has really learned how to really outmaneuver his opponents. We get the thing with Lex Luthor. He like with Ultraman and what was his name? The Hammer of Bavaria. He speaks these fight commands through a headset through them, and they're able. He says like B12 or A1 or something like that. I thought that was a really interesting way to have the villain fight. It was kind of like watching a live version of chess, where it's Lex Luthor trying to counteract every attack from Superman on a chessboard. I thought that was a really interesting way to do it. But I like the everything with Krypto, and I'll talk about Krypto in a little bit here. I purposely saved him towards the end because he's probably my favorite character in this movie. But implementing Krypto into the fighting was a really smart idea. We of course get the scene in the trailer where Krypto is like biting one of the guards in midair, and Superman comes in and knocks the dude's teeth out. Implementing Krypto in this movie was very smart, and I think it was very necessary to make this movie great as it is. I think if you cut out Krypto, this movie isn't as good. Especially in the fight sequences, the way that they James Gunn designed Krypto into those fight sequences made sense, and it made those sequences 100 times better. The way they get to show off this dog helping out uh, Superman, even though he's not the greatest dog, as Superman points out in the movie. But I think putting him into the fight sequences amplified it and made him 100 times better than what they could have been without Krypto in this movie. The Bavaria and the Jahanpur, I'm going to butcher those names hard. Apparently, this conflict in the Middle East is actually a plot line in comic books. But, you know, the times that we're in now, this is clearly a parallel to the Israel-Palestine war. I don't know how recently this conflict was in the comic books. I haven't really been keeping up with those. But this is clearly a parallel to the Israel-Palestine war that's happening right now. So it's no surprise that James Gunn was going to find a way to squeak this in here, because if you haven't seen all the social media posts, this movie has really been hit negatively by this whole concept of James Gunn naming Superman an immigrant, which, if you want to get really technical, and I'm not going to dive too much into this because I think the whole argument about the immigrant thing is just ridiculous. Superman is technically an immigrant. You know, he came from another planet, Krypton, and he came to Earth kind of illegally. It's not like he has a birth certificate he's just throwing around. So I think James Gunn probably could have went about this a different way, but he's not wrong. Superman is technically an immigrant. He's an illegal alien. Like I said, it's not like he has a birth certificate or anything like that. You know, he literally crash lands in Kansas, and people are just going to assume that he's an American now. It's not like he can vote or anything like that. So, I mean, James Gunn isn't wrong in labeling him an immigrant. I think the way that James Gunn has gone about it is probably not the best way, and probably not the way I would have gone. But he's not wrong. You know, Superman is technically an immigrant. So if you're going on social media complaining that this movie sucks because James Gunn kind of swung this immigrant perception around the movie, you're the one that's wrong, and you should probably just chill the hell out, because it's a movie. It's somebody's take on a character. But if you want to get real technical, James Gunn isn't wrong. Superman is an immigrant. He's an illegal alien. You're just going to have to deal with it. Same thing with this conflict with Bavaria. It's clearly a parallel to Israel and Palestine. They just can't use Israel and Palestine in this movie or the comic books. But it's clearly what we're dealing with now. This is kind of the overall plot in the movie, where this sparks everything that happens in this movie. Lex Luthor is working with the Bavarian president to kind of take over this neighboring country so that Lex can have his own country and basically rule the world within this. I think, what was he going to call it? Luthoria? Some weird name like that. But this conflict is basically what sparks this entire movie into existence, where Superman injects himself into here and prevents this war from happening, which he's not in the wrong at all. I think people's perception of what he does in here is idiotic. Like, he literally stopped thousands of people from dying, and you're going to criticize him because he didn't go through the government. Who cares? He's Superman. He doesn't need to go through the government. He doesn't need to go through the UN. He is an alien from Krypton that just wants to make Earth a better place, and you should probably just accept it. I don't like to get into politics on this show because this is a movie podcast, but if we ever get superheroes in this world, I'm not going to be mad if they don't go through the government, because honestly, government is corrupt. They don't know right from wrong a lot of the time, and I would trust Superman more than, say, the U.S. Senate. I'm just going to say that right now. So that's kind of where this whole movie starts, is through this conflict that is clearly an Israel-Palestine parallel, but we won't get into that either. Krypto. Now, circling back to Krypto, probably my favorite character in this movie, which is crazy to say. In a Superman movie, you would think Superman's my favorite character. I like Krypto a lot in here. And I think only in a James Gunn movie could we get a really good Krypto. Like Zack Snyder's not going to implement Krypto in there. Um, Richard Donner's not going to throw Krypto in his Christopher Reeve one. I'm kind of surprised that Bryan Singer didn't throw Krypto into his Superman Returns movie. But give it to James Gunn, who loves, CGI'd characters. And I mean, this is basically the Rocket Raccoon of DC is what Krypto is going to turn into, which I'm totally fine with because Rocket Raccoon's one of my favorite Marvel characters ever, thanks to James Gunn and Bradley Cooper. But Krypto's great. I love that he is a very wild and not trained dog, which makes sense towards the end of the movie where it's revealed that it's not even Clark's dog, it's Supergirl's dog, which who I will touch. I'll get to her in a few minutes here. I saved her for the end on purpose as well. But Krypto is great. I think he was my favorite character in this movie. I think he was very well done. The CGI was fantastic. It is an actual dog that they used a lot too. But yeah, Krypto's my favorite character in this movie. I think they did a fantastic job with him. Ultraman. So Ultraman is one of the other villains that Superman fights throughout the movie here. We get this big reveal at the end that this is actually a clone of Superman, which I think it was a bit early to introduce this, but if I think I know what they're going with, it makes sense why they would put him in the first movie. So Ultraman is what he goes by. He is a clone that Lex created throughout the 3 years that Superman has been around, collecting various DNA samples from fights that Superman has gone to, and then now he has enough to make an entire Superman, but he labels him Ultraman. I thought that was a great reveal at the end. I didn't see that coming. I thought maybe this was going to be some other Kryptonian. Maybe it was like Zod underneath there, which I don't know if it would make any sense now that I say it out loud. But I know a lot of people kind of theorize that, oh, maybe this could be Henry Cavill. But I like the fact that this was a clone of David Cornsweet, because at the end of the movie when they have their final battle and Superman defeats Ultraman and kicks him through that black hole, if I'm predicting this correctly, I think James Gunn did that on purpose to set up Bizarro Superman. So if you're not too familiar with Bizarro Superman, he's basically a more stupid and zombie-like version of Superman, which Ultraman was kind of that way. He wasn't smart. He was very robotic and very easily manipulated because obviously Lex Luthor was controlling him. Now, kicking him to the black hole, I think that was setting up Bizarro Superman and maybe a Superman sequel or some other DC project. But that's just my guess. I think that's why James Gunn had a clone of Superman. That way he can introduce Bizarro Superman later on in the future, which I think is kind of smart and kind of cool. But the scenes between Ultraman and Superman were really awesome. The fight sequences were great, kind of tying back to my thoughts on the whole action choreography and fight scenes in this movie. Really, really cool. I love how they're fighting each other through this split in half metropolis. That was really, really cool. Though that scene and the scene in the what do they call it? Like the pocket universe, aesthetically was very cool. That's why it's like an argument can be made for this being the best looking Superman movie. I mean, that river that Superman is holding that little baby and Krypto in was really bright colors and really cool. Same thing with how they designed the Metropolis splitting in half down the middle was really cool aesthetically. So that I like the Ultraman fights, and I think Ultraman as a character worked in here. If this is where I think the story is going with Ultraman turning into Bizarro Superman, which would be really cool to see. Now going back to the Supergirl notes, it was revealed at the end of the movie that Krypto actually belongs to Supergirl, which is comic book accurate. And she's played by I've seen her before, and I can't remember. It's like Millie something, I think. Let me look it up here. Supergirl actress. Millie Alcock. Yes, that's who it is. She plays a very young and immature Supergirl at the end, um, which I think is awesome. I think in some versions of Superman and Supergirl, she's supposed to be older than Clark, more mature than Clark. I like that James Gunn kind of flipped it to where she's young. I think she's got to be probably in her early 20s. Um, how old is she? So she's 25. So yeah, she'd be in her early 20s, I'm sure. Parties on different planets, as Clark said, very immature, uh, hung over a lot. But I am super excited for her Supergirl movie to come out next year. I'm sure Krypto is going to come back in that movie since that is her dog. But I really like. I was. I didn't really have a definite vision of what Supergirl was going to be like because I think James Gunn mentioned that she was going to be here, but not like in what capacity. I thought maybe she'd be here in a lot more of the movie, but saving her till the end for like a 2 minute scene was, I think, perfect way to set up the Supergirl movie that's coming out next summer. Uh, and she was great in those few minutes. She even calls Superman bitch, which I didn't see coming, and I laughed out loud in the theater because I just didn't expect Supergirl to be calling Superman a bitch, which I thought was awesome. I'm very excited for Millie Alcock as Supergirl. So with that, it's kind of tying into my last bit of notes that I'll talk about before we switch over to the rankings today. And that is, what is the future of James Gunn's DC universe? Well, like I said, we have Supergirl, the movie coming out next June. That was recently going through a title change. It was originally going to be Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, but and I think it was a good decision to just chop that subtitle off and make it Supergirl. Same thing what happened with this Superman movie. It was originally titled Superman Legacy, but they ended up chopping that off, and James Gunn with just Superman, which I think is great. I think that's the best choice that they made so far, is to just get rid of those, subtitle and just name it what it is. Supergirl, Flash, The Brave and the Bold, which I'll talk about in a little bit here. Not excited about that title name, but I get it. He's trying to do something a little different. But we'll see how that one goes. We got Peacemaker season 2 coming out in August. I think it's August 21st on Max. Peacemaker is a show that I wasn't all that excited about. I wasn't really into season 1, but now seeing Superman and looking at what James Gunn is doing with this universe, I'm definitely going to watch Peacemaker. I'm going to have to watch season 1 again just to kind of get back into the mood of Peacemaker. He even pops up in here for 2 seconds. John Cena in that ridiculous toilet bowl helmet on one of the talk shows, which I thought was a great cameo by him and James Gunn universe. So Peacemaker coming out in August. Then we have other titles. Swamp Thing's coming. An Amanda Waller show is coming. The Lantern show is coming with Kyle Chandler as Hal Jordan. I'm super excited about that one. Creature Commandos, which will be an animated show, I believe. Booster Gold is coming. The Authority. Paradise Lost, which I'm not really sure what that is. And then The Brave and the Bold, which is the Batman movie. This, of course, is stealing the title from the animated show Batman the Brave and the Bold. So that's what James Gunn has decided with. So I'm sure we're going to get Robin in there. I'm just not too excited about the title. Wish they would have just named it The Batman or Batman or something. Batman and Robin would have been fine too, but even though we had that with George Clooney. So yeah, that's kind of what the schedule's looking like. Jason Momoa has been named Lobo, so I'm sure Lobo is going to be popping out. I know James Gunn's currently getting a Wonder Woman script completed. And there's been a bunch of fan castings for Wonder Woman. I'm excited to see her again. I know I love Gal Gadot's version, but I think it's time to kind of move on from that Snyderverse and just kind of go through a different pathway here. So I'm excited to see who takes on Diana this time around. Flash, I'm sure we're going to get a Flash movie at some point. Uh, the biggest name that I've been seeing is Grant Gustin, who, of course, played Barry Allen in the Flash show. If I could pick anybody, I hope it's him. He is a very good Barry Allen. He's a very good Flash. I love the show. I would love, and I know he really wants to play the Flash again in the movie. I really hope James Gunn uh, makes him the DC Universe Flash. I think that would be fantastic to have Grant Gustin in the movie version. So fingers crossed that happens. I think that's really it. Check out Superman today if you haven't. If you haven't, I've spoiled a crap ton for you. But if you have already seen it again, I'm planning on seeing it probably on a $6 Tuesday coming up because I really want to see if I feel the same way or if something else pops out of me on a second go around. I don't think I want to wait until it's on streaming service with this one. I really liked it a lot. I was very surprised how much I liked it. The first like 20, 30 minutes I wasn't really vibing with it. But as soon as we started getting into the action and something in my mind just clicked, like looking at this movie as a Guardians of the Galaxy movie really helped me enjoy it more. I absolutely love the Guardian movies. They're one of my favorite movies of the Marvel universe. So kind of turning that switch on in my brain where I'm like, okay, this is James Gunn. This is looking exactly like a Guardians movie. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. That helped me a lot in being more open-minded to this movie. And I walked out of the theater with very excited, very energetic for more Superman, for more of this universe, especially Supergirl. I'm very excited for Supergirl, which I never thought I would be ever. But this movie was really, really fun, and I think I really, really liked it. So check out Superman today in theaters. I highly recommend seeing it on the biggest screen possible. I would love to see it on one of those Screen X's that I've been seeing on social media, but unfortunately, there is no Screen X in my neck of the woods. So if you are able to see it on IMAX or something like that, definitely pay the money to go see it because this is a movie you're going to want to see on the biggest screen possible. So very excited for James Gunn's DC universe. So let's end the episode like we always do with rankings. So on today's ranking segment, I'm going to go through my top picks for Superman, Lex Luthor's, Lois Lane's, and then the Superman films. So starting off first, let me pull up my list here. We're going to go through the Superman actors. So these rankings are for the movies only. I have a couple of honorable mentions from other projects, but I really wanted to keep this strictly the films. Maybe in the future I'll start ranking the TV shows in there, but I really wanted to just focus on the movie actors. So for the Superman actors, at number 4 I got Brandon Routh. He of course played Superman in Bryan Singer's Superman Returns. I watched all these Superman movies in preparation for the podcast today. I enjoy Brandon Routh's take on Superman. Superman Returns, if you don't know or if you don't remember, it's actually a sequel to Christopher Reeve, his Superman films. It's kind of like Christopher Reeve went up into to find Krypton, and then he returns 5 years later as Brandon Routh, I guess. Not the best Superman film, and I'll get to that in the film rankings. But I like Brandon Routh's version of Superman. He was very respectful and really channeled Christopher Reeve. But of course, with rankings, somebody has to be last. So Brandon Routh is last on the list for the film actors, but I still really enjoyed it. I wanted to make that clear that just because he's last doesn't mean I hated him. I think he did a really, really good job with what he was given as far as script and direction by Bryan Singer. Number three, this is where I put David Cornsweet. I really liked him as Clark and as uh, Superman. I was um, really nervous about his Clark Kent, but I enjoyed it. I liked his Clark Kent. He was goofy, but he was also very strict with his beliefs. I think his chemistry with Rachel Brosnahan was great with Lois Lane. So I didn't really buy the chemistry between Brandon Routh and Kate Bosworth. So that's why he's kind of on the lower tier there. But I blame the script more for that one. But I really liked Cornsweet's Superman. It was really, really awesome. Number two, this is where I put Christopher Reeve. Very iconic Superman. He's the one that I grew up with until Henry Cavill came on board, until Brandon Routh came on board. But I really love Christopher Reeve. I really love him in Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. Very, very, very well done. I absolutely love his Superman and his Clark. I love the goofiness that he brings with Clark Kent. He did it very, very well. Brandon Routh did the best that he could to kind of be that goofy Clark. But I think Christopher Reeve did that way, way better. And then number one, this is Henry Cavill. I think he's the best Superman that we've gotten so far, and probably ever will be. I know his Clark Kent really gets crapped on because he's not that silly, goofy version of like Christopher Reeve was. But who says that Clark Kent has to be that goofy? All he has to do is just kind of put the glasses on and hide in plain sight. Um, I really like his Superman. I think he looks the part, he acts the part. I just really love what Henry Cavill did, and he really got the short end of the stick when it came to ending that universe that Zack Snyder built. So those are my four Superman rankings. Honorable mention for this was Tom Welling. He played Clark Kent in the Smallville show. I really like Tom Welling. If I was going to put him on a list, in this list, he would probably replace David Cornsweet as number three. That's how far up he would be in the rankings if I did put the shows in here. But I just wanted to mention Tom Welling because I think he was a really, really good Superman and Clark. Of course, if you've seen that show, he doesn't really become Superman till like the very last episode. But his Clark Kent, I think, was really, really awesome. And he basically was Superman that whole show. It's just he didn't wear the cape and tights in that show until the very end. But I just wanted to mention him because I think he's awesome. Lex Luthor's. This is the next one I'm going to go through. Number four, I got Jesse Eisenberg. If you remember my Batman v Superman episode of the show, I completely destroyed Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. To this day, I still do not like his take on Lex Luthor. He was more Joker-like than anything. I didn't like his version at all. I think he did and I don't necessarily blame Jesse. I blame more of the script and the direction. But I did not care for his Lex Luthor. Number three, this is where I put Kevin Spacey. Now I know with everything that's going on with Spacey and everything that he did, this is just me focusing on the actor. It's himself and the character. I think he was a decent Lex Luthor. You could tell that he really tried to channel Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor, since Superman Returns was kind of a sequel to the Christopher Reeve series. But he also kind of brought his own take on there. And I kind of liked his take on Lex Luthor. It wasn't terrible. Number two, this is where I put Nicholas Hoult. Very, very, how do if I can use my words here, very psychotic, but not in the way that Jesse Eisenberg did. He really went psychotic, as in just kind of lost control of everything. He's a super genius, which is really important to the Lex character. He's probably the one that we see, other than Gene Hackman, the most kind of channel his smarts. Jesse Eisenberg tried to a little bit, but it just didn't work. Kevin Spacey, same thing. They try to channel that intelligence, but it just didn't work with the script that they wrote. Nicholas Hoult, I think, did a really good job at showcasing how smart and how far ahead that Lex Luthor is thinking. Because that's how he defeats Superman a lot, is his brains. But I like Nicholas Holt's take, and I'm very excited to see what else he does to the character. Number one, this is where I put Gene Hackman. He's probably the best one movie wise that we have gotten so far. Like I said, with Nicholas Hoult, he really brings out that intelligence to him. He has the look. Um, and Gene Hackman's just a great actor. So whatever he's in, he's gonna absolutely nail it. So those are my Lex Luthor rankings. Honorable mention here, similar to Tom Welling, Michael Rosenbaum, who played Lex Luthor in Smallville. I actually think Rosenbaum is the best Lex we've ever gotten. So if I were to rank him in these rankings, he would be number one for me. Um, I absolutely love what he did with the Lex character. Um, and I know a lot of people have stated online, and he is probably aware that people think that he is the best Lex because he is. I think he is the best Lex that we've gotten on screen so far. So I wanted to at least mention him. Same thing with Tom Welling. Moving on to the Lois Lanes. This was a little tougher for me, but I was able to get my rankings in order here. So at number 4, Kate Bosworth, who played Lois Lane in Superman Returns. Didn't really care for her. Again, similar with Brandon Routh and Kevin Spacey. Blame the script, blame the direction of that movie. It's just not a great movie to act in. So that's why she's number 4. Rachel Brosnahan, this is where I put her in. I like her chemistry with Corn Sweat, and she did a really good job at channeling that Lois Lane from previous iterations, and also putting her own spin on it. I really like that scene in her apartment where she's interviewing Superman, and she really just goes to town like Lois Lane would. She picks apart him. She basically just wants the truth, and I really liked how she played it in that scene. That scene there is where I was like, okay, she is Lois Lane in this moment, and I really like that scene. Number 2 is where I put Amy Adams. I think she was great in Man of Steel and Batman v Superman. I really like her direct approach, similar to what Rachel Brosnahan did when it came to interviewing Superman, but she also was in love with the Clark Kent and Superman, so she did a really good job. I like her take on there. And then number 1 is where I put Margot Kidder, the Lois Lane in the Matt Reeves series. She's fantastic. I think she was the best. Especially the first movie, I thought she was really fantastic in there. She's my favorite Lois Lane for sure. Honorable mention: this is Elizabeth Tulloch. She is the Lois Lane in the Clark Superman and Lois series. It's part of that Arrowverse. I think she was a pretty good Lois Lane as well. If I were to rank her in here, I'd probably put her at number 4, bumping Kate Bosworth down to 5. But I wanted to at least mention her because I do like her take in that Arrowverse part of the DC lore. So, and then the last bit of rankings is the Superman films. So at number 7, this is where I put Superman 4: Quest for Peace, one of the sequels in the Christopher Reeve series. This is where he fights kind of like Ultraman. Lex Luthor takes his DNA and clone and makes his own version of Superman, similar to what Nicholas Holt's Lex does in this film with Ultraman. It's just not great. Once we get to Superman 3 and 4, you can tell they've kind of ran out of ideas and just kind of pumping these movies out for a money grab, really. So that's why I put Superman 3 as well. And number 6, this is the Richard Pryor super genius film where he teams up with I don't even remember the villain in this one because it's not Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor takes a break and comes back in the 4th movie. So it's really just Richard Pryor being a smart genius going up against Superman. I like it because I like Richard Pryor, what he does in there. And I think it's just a better story than Superman 4. It's the only reason why I could really just interchange those last 2 as the worst Superman that we've gotten. Number 5, this is where I put Superman Returns. I used to watch this all the time when I was a kid. And I still enjoy watching it to this day. It's just not great. It could have been a lot better. And I know in no way do I blame Brandon Routh. I think he got a really bad rap for this movie. I think he was probably the best part of this movie. I really blame Bryan Singer and the writers for this movie on the direction that they went. But there's moments in there that are really cool, like the iconic moment where the the bullet hits his eye. That was a really cool effect in the early 2000s. Like, we never saw Christopher Reeve at that time do anything like that, so that was really cool. Number 4, this is where I put Superman, uh, James Gunn's Superman. I really enjoyed it. Uh, really awesome iteration and great installment into the Superman universe. So I'm very excited to see what else James Gunn has up his sleeve for the Superman character. I think David Cornsweet is really good at being Superman. So super excited. Number 3, this is where I put Superman the movie. This is the first Christopher Reeve movie. Very iconic movie. I just, in my heart, I couldn't put it any lower than 3 because it's got so many iconic scenes. I always get flashbacks of that helicopter scene at the very beginning of the movie where Superman is catching the helicopter with Lois Lane in there. Just very iconic. And then when Lex Luthor puts that kryptonite necklace around Christopher Reeve and he's sitting there in the pool, basically suffocating. Just very iconic scenes in that movie. Number 2, Superman 2. Now, has to be the Richard Donner cut. That is the only cut that I will recognize. That is one of the best Superman movies we've ever gotten, with Terrence Stamp as Zod, and then Lex Luthor coming in as well. The Richard Donner cut is the only cut that you should watch. It's what Donner intended the movie to be before the studio ripped it apart. Very similar to what Zack Snyder did with the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman. The studio, again, ripped that one apart. So when that one was released in theaters, it made no sense. Then eventually Zack Snyder came out with that Ultimate version, and it made a lot of sense. This is what happened with the Donner cut, where they released Superman 2 in theaters. People hated it. They knew that this wasn't the one that Richard Donner intended. So then they re-released it with the way that Richard Donner intended, and everybody loves it. It's really a really, really good Superman movie. And then number 1, this is where I put Man of Steel. I think Man of Steel is still the best Superman movie we've ever gotten. I felt that way walking out of the theater in 2013 when I saw it for the first time. I rewatched it again for the podcast today. I still think that Man of Steel is the best Superman movie we've ever gotten. Henry Cavill is fantastic in there. Zack Snyder did a really good job at the aesthetics and the story. I mean, the conversations between Cavill and Russell Crowe's Jor-El are just so iconic now. Same thing with Jonathan Kent and Tom Welling. I think John Schneider played him in the Smallville ones. Those conversations are what stick with me forever when it comes to Superman. So when I think of Superman, I think of those conversations that Jor-El, played by Russell Crowe, has with Cavill's Superman. I mean, we're talking lines like the very famous one from even the trailer is where Jor-El is talking about, how Superman is going to help the people of Earth strive towards great things. Like, they're going to stumble along the way, but Superman is going to pick them up and he's going to help them improve and make the world a better place. I love watching that scene in particular when he flies for the first time and you get that voiceover of Russell Crowe. Just gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. That's one of the main reasons why Man of Steel is the best Superman movie to date, is because of those scenes with Russell Crowe and Cavill. And then the action too, like the move that blows my mind still is when they're fighting in Main Street, Smallville, and Cavill like floats up to try to get away, and the Kryptonian guy just grabs him midair. Like, I've seen the behind the scenes, and I talk about this one a lot in the episode that I did on Man of Steel. But if you watch the behind the scenes on how they made that scene happen, it's mind blowing. It's one of the sickest moves I've ever seen in a Superman movie, and it was courtesy of Zack Snyder. So Man of Steel is I think the best Superman movie that we have gotten to date. I'm going to post all those on social media so you can see them. One last thing that we got to do, and that is my popcorn scale rating for James Gunn's Superman. I thought about this a lot. I went back and forth between 2 tiers, and I finally landed on which one I'm going to give it. And I'm going to give James Gunn's Superman 5 popcorn buckets. Now, I originally thought, okay, maybe give it 4, but after kind of reassessing my feelings for it, I'm going to give it 5 popcorn buckets. It blew my mind how much I really enjoyed this movie walking out of the theater. And I'm super excited to see what James Gunn brings to not only the Superman character in the future, but other characters along the way, like Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, and Green Lantern, of course. So I'm also going to post that on social media as well, so you can see my popcorn rating for James Gunn's Superman. Well, that's going to do it for the 200th episode of Cinematic Reviews. Now that we're at 200, when we hit 300, I'm going to nail this into the schedule. We will review the movie 300 on the 300 episode. So fingers crossed that we get there one day eventually. When I started this podcast, I had it in the back of my mind that if we ever got to episode 300, that we will do Zack Snyder's 300. So let's hope that we reach that milestone someday. But today we're going to celebrate the 200 mark for the podcast. Thank you to everyone that's supported the show, that's watched the show, followed the show since it was started back in 2022. And here's to 100 more episodes of the show. Looking at the schedule, we're going to dive into the Fantastic Four movies to get ready for the MCU's take, the Fantastic Four First Steps. So we're going to run through the 2005 Fantastic Four movie, followed by the Riders of the Silver Surfer, which is a sequel to that one. And then we'll go into the 2015 Miles Teller, Michael B. Jordan, Kate Mora Fantastic Four movie. And then that'll lead into the Fantastic Four First Steps, which comes out on July 21st. So I'm super excited for that. So keep a lookout for the Fantastic Four season coming up. And then check out Superman if you want to see it again in theaters before it hits the streaming services. So later, everyone.